Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian Saperstein. That is Rob Vale. We are happy you're with us. Rob, tell everyone what they can expect today.
Well, this week on the Dirty Side, we're going to do the usual roundup of news and social, which is getting more and more exciting because it means we're getting closer to the start of the season. And once we're done with that, we're going to have the third installment of Vale's Tales. After we've already brought you Jim Clark and Michael Schumacher, please listen along because today we're going to be adding Niki Lauda to the list. So looking forward to doing that. But first, back over to news and social.
Yeah, definitely. I want to just say, as we've prepared for Vale's Tales over the last handful of times we've done them, there are some of the most amazing stories about some amazing drivers, and the Niki Lauda stories you're going to hear today that you may not know are just tremendous. So stay tuned because they are epic. Obviously, this week, the cars in Spain not testing, and what was cool to me was porpoising. This whole new thing. I was not familiar that this had happened in the past. I didn't know the first time around with ground effect they kind of had this, but the cars are like bouncing up and down on the straight as they get sucked to the ground by the ground effect. And then they get so close, they get kind of shot back up, and then it happens all over again. It's amazing to watch.
I think I sent you the text the moment I'd seen it come through because there was a clip doing the rounds on Twitter. It was the head-on view coming down the straight, and I couldn't believe the ride height difference. It was like one of those kind of like pimped out lowriders that was going up and down on those hydraulics. They've got to be able to fix that, right? Because, I mean, I can't remember. I think it was, I can't remember which driver it was now, said that it hurts. Yeah. That actually hurts.
Well, I mean, it looks like it hurts. It does. It looks like they've got hydros on a 64 Impala, except they're going 210 miles an hour down the straight, going up and down and up and down. And I'm sure they all had headaches. It looked like not all the cars experienced the same amount of porpoising. Ferrari definitely had it. A few other constructors had it. And sometimes the car didn't even seem to move that much in the view. It was the helmet of the driver going up and down in the car. And what I've heard from people who are clearly smarter than I am is that you can adjust the ride height of the car. And if you go a little higher up, it won't come down so low to cause it to flex back up. However, you lose downforce in corners. So you'll lose time around the track if you raise the ride height. So there's other ways around it. I'm just now incredibly excited and curious to watch testing in Bahrain in a couple of weeks, more so than I even was before. I just, so excited to see cars on track. Now I really want to see it as opposed to pictures of it and limited video. And teaser, we have a report from Pit Lane Paul from Spain coming up shortly. So just, porpoising, just an amazing thing.
Yeah, it was a little bit frustrating to kind of have to keep your eye on Twitter to get these little snippets of videos. It will be good to see a proper session. The two things that caught my eye on one of the videos I was watching was after they sent the water trucks out to dump water all over the track, which I think they've been listening to my idea about randomly how to make a wet weather situation.
Totally.
They dumped all that water down and to allow Pirelli to do some wet weather testing. But actually what it really also allowed us to see was physically see the impact of the new aero. There's some great still shots of kind of vortices of water spray kind of hugging down the side of the car, which is what they've told us. They told us that you don't spray the air out to the side. It's supposed to track into the side of the car and then hit the rear wing and get sent way up into the air. And you could actually see this in real time. The faster they went and the more the aero was working, the higher this plume of spray was going in the back. And Gasly and Sainz both said they're really optimistic about the way these cars are going to throw air off the back because you could see it. So be interested to see what they get the data back from that and those bizarre huge scaffolding constructs on the side of the car when they sent them out with the air rakes.
I mean, there are like little sensors on those things, right? That kind of detect airflow. I mean, those things are fantastic to look at. It, like you said, it looks like scaffolding on the side of the car. The only thing better than the air rakes is the Flow Viz, the green paint, or not paint, but dye that they put on the sides of the car to watch how that goes along. I mean, it is pretty cool to watch them test these cars. Although I will say you do learn there are limits to the wind tunnel because they couldn't pick up on porpoising in the wind tunnel because the rolling track has a little bit of natural give as opposed to the track that they're on, the asphalt, which has no give. So just fascinating to see the difference. And in the first couple of days, we saw Lando fastest day one, Charles Leclerc fastest day two, Hamilton fastest day three. I think the notes we shared back and forth, Rob, were Ferrari looking frisky, very frisky, very exciting for everyone to see Ferrari turn in those days, even with the porpoising, but turn in those times. Man, I cannot wait for the season. I mean, clearly in my mind, you have 4 cars sitting at the top: Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and then McLaren. And I know there will be more, but to me, you now have, it seems like we might have a legitimate battle amongst those 4 for top of the charts.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a shame that Haas didn't get more time out on track. I hope that, we've spent these some of the episodes giving them big bold predictions that they're going to do big stuff this year. Now it looks like it's just reliability issues, which can hit anybody, but hopefully they're going to kind of get their act together and we'll see some decent time from them. But before we move on to Bahrain, I mean, this is just mine and your musings, right, over what we saw from limited opportunity of seeing what was going on in testing. So if only we had somebody who was there that could have phoned in some kind of pit lane report. Wouldn't that be great?
Hey guys, so sat here in Spain. First 3 days of, well, we say testing. They called it a shakedown. It's testing. And yeah, we sort of see what we expect to see with Mercedes looking strong. Red Bull are, slightly behind them, I think, but... And then there's a whole bunch of teams at the bottom who are having, let's say, reliability issues. So there's a lot of reliability issues, a lot based around the aerodynamics, weirdly, considering how hardly any on the car. A lot of teams suffering from a thing called buffeting. But I guess that's why this thing was a shakedown. As for the lap times, as for the times people are doing, it's hard to really get a good, fair idea. And the reason is, in testing, you don't know what cars are running. You don't know how light cars are running. You don't know with fuel loads what cars are running. And again, because of the buffeting, some teams have had to raise the level of their car just to keep the car off the floor a little bit. So they probably haven't ran so heavy. So even though it's a good indicator of what's to come, I think you can expect to see Mercedes and Red Bull towards the front again, needless to say. I think that is fairly obvious. Some of the teams towards the back of the grid, as we would like to call it, probably haven't got a good read on what they're doing at the moment because, they're just trying to get mileage, just trying to get some data, the usual sort of stuff that you do in testing. So I'd say don't get too carried away with lap times. They don't really mean anything at the moment. I think they're a good conversation point, but the reality is I don't think we really still know yet. I think, again, Bahrain test, you'll have the same sort of scenario. You're going to have a good idea by the end of Bahrain test, however, who's going to be where. But again, it's just an estimate based on what you think that team is running at the time, as in weight, as in fuel, blah, 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 as in setup. But yeah, it's going to be close. There are a lot of teams who are definitely improving. You've seen, obviously, issues with Aston Martin, with Alpine. These are the things that will get ironed out over the next week before we head to Bahrain. So Bahrain does become fun. But it's fascinating. The cars look great on track. That's what I will say. The cars look stunning. The big wheels, the big wings, everyone's like, oh, how will they look? Trust me, it looks great. So it's going to be a fun year. So good to speak to you all. And I'll get back to you at the end of Bahrain. Enjoy.
There he was, Pit Lane Paul.
Pit Lane Paul, that's his new name. Does he know that's his name, or is that going to be news to him?
But I'm just hoping he can get out of the sleeping bag that he's obviously inside while he was recording that in time to be able to get to Bahrain. So he couldn't find the zip to get out, I don't think. But thanks a lot for doing that, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. I know you're a dedicated listener on the Dirty Side, and we appreciate all of your insights. You have no idea how much. I just want to highlight a couple last things here. I'll get my English working at some point. You know what is exciting to me? If you think about it, there is one weekend left with no Formula One. And let me explain what I mean. The weekend of, the 3rd, 4th of March, 3rd, 4th, 5th, there's no Formula One. But on March 11th, Friday, Drive to Survive drops on Netflix. March 10th, 11th, 12th is testing in Bahrain, which will have more coverage, more ability to watch. We are almost there because then the following week, 18th to the 20th, is the real deal. You should be running around. This is not a drill. Bahrain starts March 18th, 19th, 20th. We are so excited at the Dirty Side. Just fantastic. And our plan for pods is, because we're based in America and as we are America's leading Formula One podcast, the plan is
before.
Yeah, you may hear that a little bit. The thing that's exciting to me is we'll watch the races, the vast majority of which are in the morning, and then we'll record the podcast in the afternoon or evening on a Sunday and publish. The plan is to publish Sunday night before we go to sleep. So for Europe, you'll have this for Monday morning commute or early morning workout, whatever. And same for America following. So that's our plan going forward, is having as quick as possible reaction and thoughts by Monday morning for everyone. And we're just so excited. So, and the last note I had before I turn it to you, Rob, is, sort of a downer, but the Russian GP has been canceled. We all kind of know why. But I just hope they fill that spot on the calendar, because I can take 23 races. If they wanted to put 2 more races on, I'd take 24. If they do just do 22, I'll live with that too. But I just that was my little highlight. I'm so excited. One more weekend without Formula One, and then we are rolling.
It's come around quicker than I thought. When we started this, it was so far away, the beginning of the season. It was like, how are we going to film material? Well, maybe we shouldn't even launch the pod yet. Maybe we should just spend time working out what we're going to cover from week to week. And here we are, and we're kind of up to, what is it? Today's episode 12, which drives me. I can't believe we're up to 12 already, and the season's around the corner. So we got to take advantage where there's no races to be able to do some other pieces, which is going to be a nice segue into looking at Niki Lauda. With me and you were both exchanging notes. I can't believe it's 3 years.
Yeah.
It's 2019 since he passed away. And it's like, that can't be right. But I think we're not quite at 3 years yet, but almost there. But just like in the other two, when we did Clark and Schumacher, some of the actual research looking into this to go and fill in the bits beyond the bits that I kind of knew, that's been amazing. It's kind of like learning Formula One all over again, doing this and having a chance to go and kind of look into these things. So
cool. Wait, hold on a second though. I have like 8 different versions of Sap Stats music, and I'm always willing to play them. Although I will say our 100 seconds of DRS guest is an IP attorney and told me to stop playing real music. So I've done that. But he sent me a tweet, but where's the Veils Tales music? You don't have music yet?
I don't have any Veils Tales music yet. We'll have to work on that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'd encourage all the listeners to tweet at us at F1 Dirty Side and tell us what Rob should be using to lead into Veils Tales. Sorry, back to you, Rob.
No, that's okay. So let's pick it up where all good stories should start, which is at the beginning. And right from the get-go, I had to look into something because I had no clue. It said early years, Niki Lauda, as a young driver, got into Formula V. And I was like, that's a typo. What?
Is it Roman numerals, Formula 5? I don't know. What are we talking about here?
Which apparently is Formula Volkswagen. It's a popular open-wheel junior motor racing formula, which was basically cheaper to run in than Formula Ford. So he kind of launched his way through that. He got over into sort of more private racing in Porsche racing, and then did something which was probably going to start laying the foundations for the type of guy that he was, this kind of no-nonsense, just meticulous in planning. He took out a 30,000 bank loan secured in life insurance policy on his own life so that he could afford to get into F2 because completely going against his family. They didn't want him anywhere near racing. He was supposed to go and get a proper career. And it was kind of like, no, screw you. If you're not going to help me fund it, I'm going to take out an insurance policy in my own life to secure a bank loan.
There were a lot of stories where he talks about, and he's quoted as talking about the family in the banking business and how they anticipated Niki joining the banking business as well. And how he had a long conversation with his grandfather, how that was not what he wanted to do and how disappointed his grandfather was. So I think, like you said, it's a great example of what's to come from a headstrong, brilliant young man who kind of knew what he wanted. So yeah. It was a great kind of story to start off Niki.
Yeah, and so he bought his way into the March F2 team, but his talent was spotted and he quickly got moved up into their F1 team, which was in 1972. He made a pretty good start there, but the car wasn't fantastic. And he very quickly moved across the following year in 73 to British Racing Motors, or BRM, where he took another bank loan out to buy his way into that team. However, the team was pretty much in decline. I had to actually look them up as to when they'd come and gone. They'd had they'd had a world champion in Graham Hill, but then they'd kind of been on the decline. And again, Niki saw that they were on the decline, but he got third place at the Monaco GP with BRM, and a certain Enzo Ferrari came and knocked on his door. He moved across to Ferrari in 74, and he managed to get second in his first race in Argentina. He got his first win, and Ferrari's first since 1972, a few races later in Spain, and came fourth in the World Drivers' Championship. So this guy's gone from, like, where is it? 1972, buying his way into Formula One. And by 74, he's fourth in the World Driving Championship.
I mean, that Ferrari team as well, he was partners with Clay Regazzoni, who I would put up with Nigel Mansell as the best F1 mustaches of all time.
For sure.
I'm not sure it's a category, but it should be. You should get an extra point. Yeah, you get an extra point. Best mustache, you get a point on the World Drivers' Championship.
I doubled down the following year, 75. It was a bit of a slow start, no better than fifth in his first few races, and then he went on to win 4 of the next 5 and just dominated that season. He won the title in Monza, so the home of, in Italy. Wins the title, and Ferrari get their first constructors since 64. I mean, this guy kind of went from nothing to the top within no time at all. And it feels like we're kind of rushing through this little backstory, because it's really in these few years that follow now that I really start thinking you start getting an insight into this guy. He lapped the Nürburgring in under 7 minutes that season. It was 2 miles longer than it was, and that track would then feature heavily the following year. So anyone that's seen the movie Rush knows what's coming, which, by the way, is a fantastic film.
A great movie. Ron Howard nailed it.
Absolutely, 100%.
I can't get enough of that movie. It's so good.
And we'll come back to that later, actually, to talk about some of the quotes that he had on it after being part of it. So anyway, 76, he's absolutely cruising to retaining his title. No one can get near him. And then they hit the Nürburgring on August 1st, 76. He led calls to boycott the race with the other drivers over safety concerns, didn't get listened to. Race goes ahead. Lap 2, he's in a big old crash, and his Ferrari is engulfed in flames. Lots and lots and lots of flames. He's trapped. He can't get out. But Arturo Mazzario, probably said that. I've butchered that. That's probably not how you say that. Pulls him out, and Lauda later referred to him as being the reason that he was alive. He had horrific burns. His lungs were scorched from some of the materials that were melting in his car, created toxic gas that kind of just didn't do great things to his lungs. He lost most of an ear, his eyelids. Now, this is a piece I didn't realize. I thought it had only happened once, but on the way to hospital, a priest read in the last rites. The priest was basically, right, you're toast. That's it. You're out of here. 2 days later, a different priest in hospital read him his rights again. I didn't realize he'd been read his rights twice until I started looking into this. And there was a line here that said, as far as the Catholic Church was concerned, Niki Lauda was dead twice. Only Niki wasn't the type of guy that was going to go that way. There's a story or a quote from him about not wanting to, he could feel that he was felt like he was falling asleep as he was being pulled out of the car, and also later in hospital. And he was convinced that wasn't actually sleep that he was going to be falling into. So he just basically mentally battled through, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. Listen to all of this, listen to doctors. You might hear something that's going to be able to help you on the recovery. I mean, he's not like languishing in pain and feeling all sorry for himself. There's a quote, he's listening to the doctors so he can try to understand what's going to be the best way to get him back out on the track again as fast as possible.
I mean, the fortitude of a guy like this to be in that situation and not sort of fall victim to the situation, not to just be, at the whim of fate, but to say, nope, I'm coming back from this, and I'm going to listen and be ready, and I'm going to kick some ass and push away death. I mean, how amazing is that? It actually reminds me of, just because I know more about it, the Roman Grosjean crash. And one day we'll talk about that. But I watched all the interviews, and he talked about something similar. And Just it's amazing what Niki did.
Yeah, and then he went on to insist that he had his lungs drained and vacuumed 3 times without anesthetic, which apparently, not that I can talk to, is a horrendously painful experience, but he knew it needed to be done. The guy that was nicknamed apparently the Rat because of his prominent front teeth didn't care, had no kind of vanity whatsoever, and insisted on limiting reconstructive surgery to replacing his eyelids only because that's what he would need to drive. So he didn't care about the fact that he'd got an ear missing, half of his scalp was fried, and the hair was never going to grow back. So he just wore his trademark cap, and that's that came about. He said he literally just wore that to prevent others from seeing it. He didn't really care. And 6 weeks later, 6, not 16, not 60, 6 weeks later, he's back in a race car for the Italian Grand Prix at Monza.
He'd only missed 1 or 2 races. The way the timing was, I think he'd missed 1 race or 2 races. I can't remember.
I think it was 2 races he missed.
Nothing. 6 weeks after that, he'd been last rites twice, was having them vacuum out his lungs without anesthetic. And then 6 weeks he's in a car again.
Getting his eyelids rebuilt so that he can blink. and then getting a special helmet constructed to ease the pressure on his wounds. But then even in that, the race that he came back, there's tales of when he took his helmet off, just kind of unwrapping kind of blood-soaked bandages because it had all just been seeping through during the race. I mean, I can't even comprehend being that kind of single-minded that it's just an injury. I'm fine. I didn't die. Everyone else is fussing over nothing. He came back and won races and could have, even by missing those couple of races, could have retained his title. But when they got to Japan, it was poor conditions again, and I think probably once bitten, twice shy. He didn't want to enter. Said it was too dangerous. James Hunt kind of limped around and managed to get, I think it's the 5th position he needed to take the title by a point. But oh my God, the fact that he came back and lost the title by a solitary point is just absolutely phenomenal. And they did it great justice in the film.
Yeah, that particular piece is really good in Rush. Agreed.
Yeah. And 77 is a good example of when he made his mind up, his mind was made up. He won the title with 2 races to spare, but had enough. So didn't even drive the last 2 races of the season. He'd won the title. There's nothing else to drive for. He'd already decided he was leaving. So he told Enzo he was leaving with immediate effect. It's just like, I'm not even going to see out the last 2 races. I'm done. It's just and like I say, an example of just knowing what you want to do and just executing to it. He went to Brabham the following year, and I know that you love a story involved in his time at Brabham, Brian. Oh, Brabham, Brian, that's quite difficult to say.
That is. I do. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago as well. So in 78, as you said, Niki was at Brabham, and I cross-referenced this the other week without knowing Niki was at Brabham. When I mentioned people doing weird things with cars, and we've talked a lot about the Tyrrell 6-wheeler in the Brabham fan car, and you say, what are the odds that the great Niki Lauda would have been in the fan car? Well, it's 100%, it turns out. So they had, first of all, Brabham. Let's talk a little bit about it for 10 seconds here. It was owned by Bernie Eccleston, who basically ran Formula One for the last 15 years until fairly recently. I can't believe Bernie's team was Brabham, so I did not know that. Second, the car that they were in, the BT46, was designed by Gordon Murray. Gordon Murray has designed a boatload of Formula One cars, but he's also designed my single favorite road car ever, the McLaren F1, the 3-seated McLaren F1, which is just probably one of the greatest road cars ever made. I mean, it had gold lining in the engine bay to get rid of heat. I mean, it was so bonkers when it came out so many years ago. It actually makes the Bugatti Veyron and then Chiron look normal. And I mean, first of all, you have Bernie Eccleston, Gordon Murray, 2 geniuses. I don't like Bernie Eccleston, but that's a different story. We don't have to get into that. But then they hired Niki Lauda, and they created a B variant of their car, also known as the fan car, which had a big fan at the back of the car. And everyone thought that was to push it forward or to deal with exhaust. It was really about cooling and a way of actually augmenting some of the ground effect, to take some of that ground effect up and even make it even more dominant. So they introduced it at the 78 Swedish Grand Prix. and they were trying to beat the Lotus 79, which was really good with ground effect. And this fan was supposed to do that. And it was an immense amount of downforce, a little bit of cooling. The car only raced once in this configuration in the Formula One World Championship, and Niki Lauda won the 78 Swedish Grand Prix in the fan car. How crazy is that? How crazy is that?
Now you say, the fan that was, for cooling, but had a downforce impact. It's like, I think this is one of those examples of maybe an early example of loopholes in rules. Oh yeah, it's just for cooling. My favorite thing about it is that they withdrew it, even though the FIA ruled it could be used for the remainder of the season. They said, there's nothing we can rule it out on. It's legal. And then you start getting into the kind of the more political side of F1, maybe, where it later transpires that Bernie Ecclestone was really he was pitching, I think, to take over Formula One, and was worried about how this whole piece could upset other teams, and the fan car could lead to the collapse of the Formula One Constructors Association. It was kind of more of a political, you didn't need to retire that car. It was awesome, but I'm going to, because I've got an eye on a bigger prize, is what I think Bernie's doing there.
I agreed. And I think that's true. However, I would give a little bit of shade to Formula1.com and anyone else who mentions the fan car, because it kind of comes and goes. Oh, the Brabham fan car. And then they move on and they show a picture of it. They don't talk about the fact that it was Niki friggin' Lauda driving it, that it was in one race and it won. I mean, like, you should not be able to move on that fast without saying those two other things about the fan car. And I didn't know that till we were doing this research. So amazing.
So then we get to 1979, and the car was completely uncompetitive. He'd only got 4 points coming up to the penultimate race in Canada. And here's just another great example of when he made his mind up, he's made his mind up. So they go to Canada. They have the first practice session. The car still stinks. So he walks away from Formula One. When they ask him why, he says, I'm tired of driving around in circles. So didn't even see out at least when he won it with Ferrari and there were 2 races to go, at least he'd won the title and then decided, I don't need to do these last 2. I'm just out of here. Didn't even get past practice session 1 because mine's made up. I don't need to do this anymore. And he went and started a new company with one of his other big passions, which was airlines. And he formed Lauda Air. And he was a pilot. He flew.
I mean, I didn't know about his passion for air entrepreneurship and flying until we did this research. So he started his own airline, like a proper commercial airline.
Yep. And he wasn't, I think there's a story that he wasn't even sure he was going to be able to get the buy-in from the authorities. And I think one of the first flights he was coming to Australia, I think. And they said, you don't have the right paperwork or whatever. You can't come into this airspace. And he was like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm coming. You're going to have to shoot me down. They allowed the flight to continue. I mean, he just knew what he wanted and knew how to get it. And the airline continued to grow and grow and grow until he needed to fund it more. And he really needed some investment. So where could he get his hands on a lot of cash? Going back to Formula One. So in '82, he made a return to apparently the most lucrative contract in Formula One at that point. And there's a great story that, and I hope this is true. I've seen it in multiple places. It's really got to be. So he's just secured this huge contract. And in his negotiations, he told the McLaren money men that he was charging $1 for his services as a driver. And the rest was for his personality.
I got to go back to work and tell him that. The first dollar is for my services, all the rest, personality.
Oh, my gosh. And then in '84, he got his 3rd driving title, very, very small margin over his young McLaren teammate, Alain Prost. And he won his final Grand Prix in '85 and finally retired from the sport as a driver, but he never really kind of left the paddock. Now, one of the things, so again, there were a couple things that just blew my mind. Obviously, his determination after that horrendous crash. To come back. We all appreciate that about Niki. His amazing driving, 3 drivers' championships. The guy was just one of the most talented drivers to ever set foot in a car. We talked about the fan car, but this is what really blew my mind. So he got big into aviation after he retired.
And we talked about Lauda Air. Here's something I didn't know at all. After he got back into Lauda Air, he did a few other things, and Rob will talk a little bit more of that, consultant at Ferrari and doing other things. But what blows my mind is that when he started working on this, there was a crash. One of his planes crashed, and I won't go through the derivations of Lauda Air and Niki Air and all these things, but it crashed in Bangkok, killed 223 people. It was 1991. And someone asked Niki about it. He says, people always think the worst time of my life must have been, this is a quote, after the German Grand Prix crash in 76, but it wasn't. It was in 91. The effect of that disaster, the crash, was enormous. When I was motor racing, I'd taken the decision to risk my life. But when you run an airline and more than 200 people want to go from A to B and they don't arrive, that's different. That's a different responsibility. My first reaction was to say that if my company is responsible for this, then we have to stop running the airline immediately. So Niki, instead of hiding behind a boardroom or a title, he literally took responsibility to investigate the crash. He traveled to Thailand and then to Boeing in Seattle to test various scenarios. And eventually, and there's a little bit more to this, Rob, I'll let you kind of dig into this, Lauda and reluctantly Boeing concluded that a thrust reverser had deployed in flight, making the plane uncontrollable. And it was Niki who pushed this investigation forward to find this. And I think you should explain to people kind of how Boeing even came around on this, because it blows my mind.
This is, as well as the nickname of the rat from his facial features, other nickname that everyone had was the computer, because attention to detail, meticulous, brain the size of a planet. So after this terrible incident, they were trying to say that that reverse thrust system could have been recoverable by the pilot. If the pilot had been better, he would have been able to pull out of the issue. And Niki didn't agree. Absolutely didn't agree. He was so determined to prove that it was not the fault of his airline, or more specifically, the crew members. He took 15 attempts to recover from exactly the same issue in Boeing's 767 simulator, failing each time. So he got Boeing's own simulator, set it up, instigated the same issue that caused the crash, and tried to recover that 15 times.
And he's a pilot. Remember, he would occasionally fly for Lauda Air. I mean, he's a commercial pilot at this point, as well as the owner. So he knows what he's doing.
Yep. And Boeing still wouldn't listen. They continued to insist that you could have recovered from that issue. And this is the bit that just got me smiling while I was reading this story. So he then offers to fly one of their aircraft, accompanied by two of their test pilots, and deploy the reverse thruster and see if they can pull out of it. What happened next? Boeing accepted the issue was not survivable, leading to modifications to the systems and exonerating Lauda Air and the engine manufacturer. I mean, no one else, maybe other people would have, but not many other people on this earth would have gone to those lengths to keep pushing and proving and proving and proving, and then finally say, screw it, let's get on a plane, come with me. If you believe it, let's go test it out in real life.
I mean, this guy is just amazing. I mean, a force of nature, Niki Lauda, to do that, just tremendous. But as you said, he wasn't done with Formula One either. 93 to 01 consulting role at Ferrari. 2012, he kind of had a Mercedes role linked to the team in convincing Lewis to join at that time. There's a lot of stories that he had a big say in swinging Lewis to Mercedes. And then obviously the Rush movie in 2013. He said it was about 80% accurate, a little bit of overly dramatic components with the rivalry with Hunt. He said they were much closer friends away from the track than it portrays. I will say this, just taking it off the movie for a second. After his accident, when a member of the press, and I think this was probably stylized, but when a member of the press said something about Niki's wife being able to look at him, and then they show Hunt just clobbering the guy in the stairwell afterwards. It's one of the few times I've stood up in a movie theater and cheered. I'm like, yes, this is the good guys standing up for the good guys. And so it was fun to see that. But I don't know. What else did you hear about the movie, Rob?
Well, when you see things like this, you kind of really hope that A, it's as accurate as it can be, and B, that he would actually really enjoy it. So the fact that he kind of gave it a resounding thumbs up, other than the rivalry between him and Hunt, when he kind of, again, very pragmatic, he said, look, I get it. They need to kind of add that in there. It's based on a true story, but modified for today's world where characters fight each other and people like to see people fighting each other. But out of the car, James was the only one I could ever be with. In the car, we were rivals, but away from the track, great friends. And so I think they kind of, you can understand why they didn't do that for the movie. They wanted to build the kind of the rivalry, and it was the epicenter of the entire film. But I think there's another quote from him that said, the only thing was that made him sad was, I wish that James could have been here to see the whole thing. If we were able to watch the movie together and we'd be able to laugh about it, that's the only thing that makes me sad about this film. I thought, oh man, that's kind of tugging at the old heartstrings right there. And he loved Daniel Bruhl. Is that how I pronounce his surname? The guy that played him in the film. He said he was fantastic. He said he's very good. He's outstanding. He nailed my Austrian English accent, which is even harder. And Chris Hemsworth talks like James. So I think they're very, very good together. So it was a great, great film. And the one bit that I then took away from this, the last quote when they were talking to him about the film, something I never even thought about. He mentioned the scene in the hospital was the first time he'd ever really thought about seeing that through the eyes of the others. Because obviously he lived it through his eyes. He's the one lying in bed. He's seeing all these people coming in looking horrified, hearing priests read last rites, people's reactions to his injuries. But he could never understand why people were so concerned. But when he saw Daniel in the makeup, kind of in that moment in there, that let him relive that moment from the view of everybody else that was in that room. That's just madness. No one really gets a chance to do that in the real world. So kind of Hollywood gave him that moment and he could finally appreciate why everybody had been so concerned for him. It's just cooks my brain.
Yeah. I mean, that is amazing to hear a story like that and his appreciation of the movie. And there's a few other kind of neat little things about Niki. When he raced in the beginning, his helmet was plain red with his name on it in white. Pretty bland, pretty generic, but to him, that's all he needed. He had there was a bank logo in the chin area in the beginning. That was his only real sponsor. And after his crash, when he had the special helmet made, he occasionally had the white helmet now with red, but the red hat that is so ubiquitous that everyone knows for Niki Lauda, that Mercedes still hangs in the garage from his years helping them when he wore it all the time. That was a hat he wore, as you said earlier, to kind of cover some of the scars. And he actually had personal sponsors, Parmalat and others, on the hats. But by the end, the red hat was just Niki Lauda. And I know Michael Schumacher also had a red helmet. But there aren't many drivers I associate with a particular helmet or hat color, and Niki and red is one of those by far.
Yeah, agree. And I hadn't realized, you think of Niki Lauda, you think of the red cap, and you've mentioned kind of the sponsorship there, but this guy was shrewd, man. It said that he basically was selling this sponsorship, and there was speculation in 2007 that when Swiss machinery maker, I'm not even going to try and pronounce this, Oerlikon, an annual six-figure sum to sponsor that cap. Talk about turning adversity into triumph. Not only was it, to him, it was just minimalistic. I don't need to have the reconstructive surgery. I'm just going to wear this cap for the use of others, really, just so they don't have to stare at my head. Oh, but people seem to be taking interest in it, so I can probably sell sponsorship rights to my cap.
I might ask, Rob, I recognize this is a podcast, but I can see you. How much is Dirty Side of the Track paying you to wear a Dirty Side of the Track hat right now?
Oh, annual six-figure sum. Yeah.
I don't think that was approved by me, but that's okay.
My final thing the final thing I'd like to just, the little story here is that you've got this guy that knew he wanted to be a driver, just wanted to drive, enjoyed doing it up until a point. And when he didn't enjoy it, he walked away and he went into planes. And the thing that kind of sums up that really just driving for him was for the enjoyment of it and not anything else that comes with it is the story that he gave all of his trophies away to his local garage in exchange for free car washes. Apparently he said to them, if you give me a free car wash for the rest of my life, you can have them all. And the guy did. So he gave them to him.
The best part is I'm sure he wasn't paying for those anyway. It was one of those things. He's Niki Lauda. He shows up, you wash his car. It's one of those things. He dines out for free. And he's like, yeah, you can have my trophies. The guy's amazing. A few stats. We would be remiss if we didn't get a chance to hit some. SAP stats. All right. So, and by the way, I would just also want to mention that a couple of these I borrowed from statsf1.com, who is a tremendous website. Niki, 171 Grand Prix. He won 25 times, which is 15%. He had 24 poles, 24 fastest laps, 54 podiums, 3 hat tricks. And for all the newer listeners, that's when you have pole, the win, and the fastest lap. Niki had 1 Grand Slam, which is the things I just described, plus led the whole way. However, here's the stat that blew me away. In 171 Grand Prix, Niki Lauda had 80 retirements. 46%, 47% if you round, of his starts didn't finish because of reliability challenges. We look today, Paul, our pit lane Paul, just told us about some of the reliability issues with brand new cars, with brand new aero and ground effect, not even testing, whatever we're calling the shakedown. And some of the cars had reliability challenges. Niki, in full-fledged race gear, had 47% retirements in his career. Can you imagine what he could have done with more reliability? The man is tremendous. The last couple things I'd say about Niki, his rank on the starting grid was an average of 8.3. So he was 8.3 on the grid when he started races. However, when he finished, Niki Lauda was a 4.06, meaning he improved at least 4 positions plus every race over his entire career, a 3-time champion. Niki Lauda. Oh, wait, no. Niki Lauda. Well, clapping, laughing, it all works. I actually labeled them incorrectly, so I clicked on clapping and it was laughing. I'll fix that for you.
I'm half thinking about whether we edit that out at the end or whether just leave it in.
Leave it.
Bust your chops. I think that's staying in, Brian.
Leave it in. That's fine. I'm not perfect.
Well, we know that. Yeah. So, another one that I've thoroughly enjoyed doing because it's just great to kind of just get in and amongst. It's so easy these days. The World Wide Web, it's your friend. You go and find all these things out. And I like corroborating the stories where you'll find a story somewhere. Like the thing about the giving away the trophies, I think I'd heard before, but I was kind of like hunting it down. Google, did Niki Lauda give away all of his trophies? And you find all these different points. So it was really good to do that and look into that. And gave me another excuse to watch Rush again. So there's never a downside to that.
Never. Fantastic movie. And next we have a great opportunity to have one of our listeners to do the 100 seconds of DRS. So we're looking forward to that. Next week, we have some fake F1 facts. We have our last pod before we have actual cars on track we can see. It's just amazing. And I would say this Vale's Tales was amazing, Rob. Great job. Really excited to learn about Niki.
Yep, it was really great looking into it as well, and I share the same excitement for the season coming up. But yeah, we've got to get on with our hundreds of seconds of DRS. So let's go and introduce our latest guest.
All right, we are very excited to welcome a listener of the Dirty Side to the 100 seconds of DRS. We have Paul with us today. Rob, would you like to get to know Paul a little and then administer the quiz?
Yeah, sure. It's is it a prerequisite? You have to be called Paul in order to be able to come on the show. But,
I think that's right. All guests are going to be Paul, at least for some period of time.
Well, thanks for volunteering. Thanks for reacting to the call to arms to come on the 100 seconds. So let's just do a little bit of getting to know you before we jump into the 100 seconds of DRS. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long you've been into F1, and more importantly, did Dirty Side help get you into it?
So I have not historically been in F1. I've been friends with Ryan for some period of time, and he has talked to me about Formula One numerous times. And when I had a question about Formula One, he was always the one that I would come to. So if I had it on in the background and something happened, like, for example, the championship got decided in some weird way, and I could tell that the announcers didn't know what was going on at some race course in Abu Dhabi, I called Brian to try to figure out what the hell I had just witnessed and why the guy that won seemed to have lost. So that's kind of my Formula One background, but it's very sort of informal in that way. But I have learned a lot from listening to the podcast. And I feel like I definitely I'm more interested now. I look forward to playing fantasy league since I do enjoy fantasy sports. And and it's been great listening to both.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that when you say you had to rely on Brian for knowledge in the past, but now you're listening to the podcast, you're learning stuff. It's because you're learning from my side, right? That Brian's taught you nothing.
Yes, definitely. What I've learned from you, Rob, is I've learned pronunciations that I did not know before. And so when I drive my car, back home every day, I no longer can say that I put it in the garage like I have for all these other years in my life. And the first thing that the word garage comes into my head constantly. So for you,
you don't know how hard it is for you not to say that. You don't know how hard it is for me to say garage. I feel like I'm doing it wrong at this point. But
okay, right. Okay, so next question then, Paul. Are you ready for 100 seconds of DRS?
I am. I'm very excited to be answering 100 seconds of questions.
And we're thrilled to have a real life listener on rather than just pit lane Paul. He's already being dismissed now. Okay, Brian, you're on timer duty, right?
Timer's ready. Tell me when to start, Rob.
You count us in. You give us a 3, 2, 1, and
all right,
and off we'll go.
Here we go. Paul, ready?
Yes.
Rob, ready?
Yes, sir.
3, 2, 1, begin.
Best F1 driver currently on the grid?
Hamilton.
If you were in a superhero movie, are you the hero or the villain?
Definitely the hero.
What's your favorite food?
Smoked brisket.
Batman or Superman?
Oh, Batman.
Ooh, okay. Fill in the blank. F1 in America is?
What everyone in my Twitter feed seems to be talking about.
Nice. Least favorite television program?
I don't know. Brady Bunch?
Favorite non-motorsport sport?
Ice skating.
Oh, okay. If you could add a James Bond gadget or any other type of gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
Oh, it'd have to be like something that would, I don't know, make it go into like hypersonic speed or something.
Hypersonic. Do you have any lucky superstitions?
No.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I'm American.
Favorite musician or musical group?
Listen to a lot of Pearl Jam lately.
Nice.
So go with that.
Favorite F1 track?
Spa, because apparently they had a race decided without actually running it last
year. That is correct. Bring in the knowledge.
Mario or Luigi?
Mario.
Ford or Ferrari?
Ferrari.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall?
Michael Jordan.
What's your favorite cheese?
Cheddar.
That is time. That is the 100 seconds.
Did I get through all the questions?
We've got a never-ending list that we just keep adding to. So whatever we can get through in 100 seconds. So thank you very much for playing along, Paul. Pleasure to have you on. And
Paul, thank you.
Yeah, actually, seems like you have some normal
keep turning
friends,
out the podcasts, and I look forward to hearing more of them.
Paul, thanks so much. That was amazing. Really appreciate the time. We've had a couple other listeners reach out to participate in 100 seconds of DRS. I will put out the call now. Anyone else who's interested, let us know on Twitter at F1 Dirty Side. And I'll shoot the couple of you who have reached out a message shortly. So this is awesome. I'm excited to get everyone involved. And as Paul mentioned, fantasy is around the corner. 2022 is not open yet, but the second it opens, we will have a league. And I just want to say to everybody, thanks for listening. Amazing episode. Learned so much about Niki. Just was tremendous. I appreciate it. And it was fun with the cars in Spain, but I cannot wait. Bahrain is not far away. Rob, to you, my friend.
Cannot wait till Bahrain. Everyone just go and watch Rush again, and don't feel guilty about it because it's a great film. And we will see you next week.
Sounds great. See you soon, everybody. Take care.